does and what WITS does? Is Sage your ERP or is it order management? I can't readily recall. I apologize.
Sage is our accounting package, so it's
That's
all about
right.
financials and financial
That's
reporting.
right.
And WITS is our call management system
It's
for
your
operations.
It's your which one? I'm sorry, Erica.
It's the call management system for our
The
operations.
service orders, the labor, and invoicing
And
for
it's,
U.S. invoicing.
And it's WWITS.
WWTS. Okay.
WWITS.
Okay. Got it. How's that?
Perfect.
I can spell invoicing. All right. So, so we have the U.S. for you in the U.S. activity starts in WITS. I got to get that spelling right, and then goes into Sage. Non-U.S. goes directly into Sage. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, in terms of a flow. Okay, good. And then what was the other thing I wanted to ask? Just briefly and confirm. So Scott, when you talked about keeping the solution around for the next couple of years, can you just give you or someone else on the call or a mixed combination, tell us what solution you're talking about? Are you talking about keeping both of these solutions? Are you talking about one of them until you folks...
Neither one of them are on the roadmap for change out at this moment. So it's really just a vision of the WITS call management, service call management, and its invoicing function is on the roadmap to retain and keep going forward at the time being for the foreseeable future at this point.
Okay.
So its deal is it does the invoicing for U.S. and Canada and passes it on to Sage. So that's where the Vertex integration is. Whereas the difference being for non-U.S., the services are performed in WITS, but then they're taken out and priced in a different manner and tax applied through the Sage application, which is manually maintained rates, if I'm not speaking out of turn. So if there's to be changes there, there's significant consideration of workflow changes that would need to be considered if we were to do it differently. So that's why I'm just saying initially, we know we got to keep that alive for the period of time, but if there's changes and opportunities there, it's possible, but we have to look at the workflow changes because all that activity isn't priced and et cetera for the higher volume is done through the WITS application. So you'd have a consideration of a workflow change.
Okay.
And then, the other thing about the WITS application is a lot of the calls to the Vertex system are batch oriented, so they're not necessarily spread out through the day. Billing is done in batches, and those batches just work on large groups of invoicing and calculating the taxes. So unlike like if you're in a grocery store chain or something like that, you get individual transactions spread throughout the day. In our world, a lot of this accumulates to a lot of service orders that are done throughout the day, but then the invoicing is done in a batch. They're large and small batches, but those batches are, can be pretty large and can actually, I think, even run hours. And they do a lot of Vertex calls.
Okay. Got it. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. All right. Whoops. Sorry. And then this is what we captured as the requirements. You've got now some value-added tax considerations. You're looking for better reporting. Update the interfaces so that it's not as costly to you folks to maintain some of those legacy interfaces. And then Mark had discontinued support of ISAM in Q Series version 5. Okay. So anyone want to elaborate on any of these things? Better reporting. Do you want to just give us a little bit, a data point on that, or a quick, specific, what type of reporting insight? Or any limitations you have today?
Well, I will say that reporting, because of the nature of how we interface to Vertex, every month is a separate set of Vertex registry databases. So when it comes to reporting, you have to deal with the fact that we have a different Vertex registry for every month of the year, and those registry databases. Like if you want to do reporting for for one whole year, you got 12 Vertex databases to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. And then a lot of that is because just I think right from the beginning, the WIT system, the billing is, there's so much high volume to it that the registry databases get very large, and so rather than have those accumulate over like a year's time, they're segmented out every month.
That's right. I remember you telling me that you folks do that every month. Yep.
Yeah,
okay.
And they're not really combined in the end. So Lenny maybe can speak more to, and Patrick, to the challenges of that. But if they get like an audit or something like that, it just becomes I'm sure it becomes more challenging to try to get the data that they need for an audit or any other kind of reporting they're doing that takes more than a month's worth of data.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
I think some of the EDIs as well, some of the larger returns, the EDIs don't necessarily work on the older version. Now that could maybe something that doesn't need an upgrade of version, but at the moment I think some of the EDIs aren't uploading correctly, or there seems to be some kind of problem there. And on top of that, also some of the knowledge management stuff, we're probably not using it as much as we could be, because by knowledge management I mean getting rates and things like that. We're probably not using as much as we could be because maybe of the user interface.
And can you just I don't know who was speaking there. I apologize because I'm presenting. Who was that?
Sorry, Patrick.
That was Patrick. Okay, I was going to guess it was Patrick, but based on our last call. So thanks, Patrick. Patrick, what did you say? What did you say? It was, just if I heard you correctly, was it EDIs that you said?
Yeah, some returns allow you to do electronic data interchange with the state directly, whereas other large returns, they don't seem to be. Daniel might further detail that because he actually submits returns. But in the past, a number of the larger returns, there appears to be an EDI option on Vertex, but for some reason we're having trouble uploading the particular EDIs that download.
Are you talking about the return software, or?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Tom. What was the question?
Just the whole nature of the segmented databases that are used for reporting, and also used for getting the data into the Vertex return system. The database when it comes out of the WIT system is a month at a time. So getting that data into any other system like Vertex returns, things like that, is a monthly sort of situation dealing with it.
Okay.
The other thing is that every time we upgrade to a new version of Vertex, it means that the database is slightly different, and so you can only do reporting or extract information out on a particular version at a time. So if you for instance, we've got data that goes back to Vertex Q series from version 3. So we have version 3 databases, we have version 4 databases, we have version 5 databases, and when we upgrade, we'll have some other version databases. And
Right.
you know, that what we've done is we haven't converted those older data from those version databases to something that is a common pool of information. All, you know, it's all accessible by one program. So
Right.
so if you want to do, like, if you're doing an audit or something like that, you want to look at data over a multi-year time, you might be dealing with not only the monthly breakdown of information, but the fact that some of those months might be using Vertex version, you know, 4, and some of those months might be using version 5.
Right. So Mark, one of the things in that, you know, that we should, you know, kind of focus on in the demo is obviously the reporting and having that centralized view, bringing that over to on-demand or our cloud environment, you know, and what that will afford folks once that data is migrated over, such they can have that holistic view and not have this, I don't want to say, you know, cobbled together approach in terms of getting to various Vertex Q series databases. So we can talk a little bit about more about that during our demonstration. So I think this is helpful. I think the only other thing I wanted to talk about was the international implications. Maybe we could just spend one more minute on that, and then we can dive into things here. What the increased international requirements? Can someone talk to those just briefly?
What do you mean by, what do you?
Well, yeah, I captured value-added tax requirements. Is there evolving?
Well, right now everything's done manually, and we do it all through reporting out of Sage, which is all well and good, but we're really looking to see if there's something we can do, you know, more holistically, and something that has, because the Q series that we use now obviously doesn't have any offering to that spectrum.
Right. For
we're
that.
really looking to see what we can do.
Okay.
If there's any processing we can do out of there, because everything we do from an international perspective is manual.
Yeah.
So
okay.
any research we do is manual on tax rates. Any returns we do is manual. Everything's manual.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Got it. Yep. Because the Q series doesn't offer that. That makes sense. Okay. And are there specific regions of the globe that you folks do focus on, or are you entirely global, like Asia Pac, LATAM? You know,
no, we have a couple of entities in EMEA, and we have 8 entities in Europe.
I'm sorry, EMEA and Europe, right? Or you said EMEA, right? Just EMEA.
8 in Europe.
8 in Europe.
Yep. 3 in LATAM, and
3
we have
in
a
LATAM.
Canadian company.
Okay, and that content is covered by North America. Okay. Sorry, I was trying to type and listen to Erica, so.
That's okay.
All right, that's a good basis. So I think, Mark, hopefully you're pretty well armed, and it kind of helps me from a. So I'm just gonna talk about a couple quick things here. I mean, you know, basically here at Vertex, you know, we are thought as a pioneer. So it's important that you know a little bit about us, right? Who you're currently doing business with, which we're very appreciative of, right? A lot changes. Heck, a lot changes in the last couple of years since we've talked to you. Never mind, the last 40 plus years we've been in business, right? So there's a lot of complexity. I think we spent the last 10, 12 minutes or whatever it was talking through the complexity that you folks are dealing with, right? Given the fact that you have some legacy solutions in place that admittedly are working. Some aspects of them are a little cumbersome and manual today. And there's the good news is that there's Vertex has solutions here with our O series offering that can help streamline those processes. And this is irrespective of the pre-pandemic conditions that were changing at lightning speed, and then you introduce that into it, and obviously there's going to be a lot of change coming out of the pandemic already, as evidenced, right? So just a lot of change. And so as part of that, I'm going to go right into presentation mode. Sorry, I got a couple slides here that aren't whether they're business, regulatory, or technology, right? All things that we've talked about, and essentially allowing you folks to be more agile and competitive, right? And it's really about digitizing tax and providing the holistic view that we talked about earlier, and getting to these next generation capabilities, right? Integration. So we have the integration to Sage today, which is a homegrown application, is it not? That's homegrown.
Kind of.
Right.
It's based on a package, but it's been modified considerably throughout the years. Okay.
Is that what its name was, or did you folks rename it? Because that looks awful.
We just renamed it. It's
yeah, that's what I thought.
It's the Dispatch One application that we've refined and enhanced for 30 years and renamed it to WITS.
Okay, all right. Because I was going to say, if that's the case, they owe you some naming royalties because it looks a lot like WWTS. All right, so yeah, again, I'll let you read these things. I'm not going to read them all, right? But there's a lot of complexity and a lot of capability. So we work with a lot of these providers today, less about some of the solutions that you're working with. Just know that we partner with a lot of organizations from an application perspective. Sage being one of them, right? They're not on here because they, this is an evolving slide, right? But our solution, if you look at this in the middle, right? These are the different solutions that are either cloud-based or not. It doesn't necessarily matter to us. We are seeing a major shift to the cloud in the marketplace, as you're probably reading and maybe hearing at WWTS as well. And then you've got our specific solutions, right? Whether they're tax calculation, well, we've got the integrations right to those solutions, right, in the long blue bar, and then underneath those for our solutions, we've got everything from our tax calc engine to compliance, the management of the data. So that's something, data integrity, that we may want to just briefly mention, Mark, as part of our discussion today. Just to help folks potentially rationalize that compliance data that they spoke about earlier. I think Tom was talking to that. Document management, whether it's for exemption certificates, et cetera. And then we have industry specific solutions. Less about today's discussion, but that continues with our innovation. So today we have retail, we have leasing, and we have telecom. And that's going to continue to expand. And then basically underneath that is our technology. What goes into the, what's lying under the covers. Okay. So this just tells you that we've got, we don't consider tax calculation or tax automation, indirect tax automation, as a commodity. We think that there's, that it is indeed mission critical. The implications of not being compliant are severe. And one missed audit or one failed audit can result in easily pay for the software in one fell swoop. So certainly a lot of exposure there, and I don't need to tell you folks that because you live it and breathe it each and every day. I talked earlier about our solutions. I'm not going to spend more time on this other than to let you look at it. Just look at those solutions that we have, and I talked about our industry solutions on the right. Really, O Series gives you the capability that Q doesn't, right? So it gives you the global content, right, beyond just North America. It gives you use tax. I forget whether use tax was in scope here or out of scope. Are you currently accounting for use tax today with any degree of volumes?
There's a few states that we have it for.
Sorry?
There's a few states that we have it
for. Okay.
But if I remember correctly, I want to say it's Missouri, and the series that we have doesn't actually work appropriately for it. So we have to do it manual.
Yeah, Q Series doesn't do any, to my knowledge, Mark, Q Series does not perform any use tax. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Well,
I think it does.
here's the thing about Q Series. It doesn't have consumer use tax content. However, people did used to hook it up to their purchasing applications, but it's basically using the sales tax rates. So I've seen people hook it up, and sometimes the rates are the same. So the good news is most people are pretty good with it. There are certain jurisdictions around the U.S. where the consumer's use tax rate is different from the sales tax rate. So I'm guessing since the whistle's been blown at some of them, like it's not taxable maybe at a county level, or there's an extra 0.25% in some particular jurisdiction. But O Series does have those capabilities, whereas Q Series, like I said, does not have that built in. It was just a sales tax only application. But we did have a lot of people basically hook it up to their purchasing.
But we are not condoning that, just to be clear. Right, Mark?
Correct.
Well, I would add that from what I've read, the Q Series software that we have, it does have use tax rates in the system. I don't know how that differs from sales tax, but
it has seller's use. It has seller's use.
There's a provision to compute use tax, but part of that provision requires us to determine nexus of what's going on as far as that transaction goes. And the interface that was written by our vendor, Ostia, did not consider that nexus capability for determining nexus. And also, there's some business decisions that have to be made in order to make sure that the application software can properly determine nexus.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest features of the O Series platform. Is one of the first things that you do is configure your taxpayer for its nexus profile across the globe. It's essentially so.
Okay.
That's a lot of things within Q Series were manual. A lot of things were you had to set up the taxability of the product, the service, the customer. With just some broad-based brush strokes about how things were done. Whereas O Series tries to get a little bit more automation around that, a little bit more basically ease of use. And like I said, we'll show that here in a minute. So
yeah, and Mark, you're going to show that spreadsheet template too. And so some of you may be saying, and if I'm reading your minds, I'm not trying to, but you may be saying, well, just show us the software. Just show us the software. In my 27 years of doing this, I think showing the software is great, and we're totally going to do that. But the nuggets that you get out of these discussions are so valuable that we can go and we can show you the applicable parts of the software that will address, the challenge, the specific challenge. So there is a method to the madness here. So I appreciate you, we appreciate you folks staying with us on this. And, sometimes on a demo, and if this occurs today, please, if we're going too fast or you miss a click or you get an instant message, intra-company instant message, and you didn't see where Mark clicked, ask us to repeat it. Ask us, because one thing that when, I work for a software company, but when things are demoed to me, sometimes it's hard to follow. Okay, what did he just click on? And okay, I followed the workflow up until that point, and then I lost it. So again, I think there's a lot of intrinsic value in talking about these pain points. Tom commenting, Scott commenting, Erica, the rest of the team, Patrick, and just sharing with us, hey, these are the challenges. I think one of the really good things that came out of our discussion last time was, I think Patrick brought up, if I'm not mistaken, hey, we may see some new added functionality in going to 9. And I think Mark did a great job of clarifying that there will, there's no new functionality capabilities. It's more just technical capabilities, right? So there's no tax functional, like we're not offering use tax in Q Series, right? It's not going to come out in version 9, 10, or 11, right? It is what it is. But there'll be improvements in terms of the technical, right? The way we connect, we may connect or drive some efficiencies from a technical perspective, right, Mark? I think Mark's there.
The more things that we're doing is for the support on the tax technical. So, the support for Colorado branch rules, the changes for the Illinois state tax rules. I mean, technically, Q Series is not going to make leaps and bounds in terms of web service capabilities and things like that. It is remaining an on-prem legacy product.
Right.
So again, the innovation definitely is not on that platform.
Innovation, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah. That's exactly right. Okay, perfect. So again, just a couple more snippets here for you. We are cross-industry. We're a leader there. Okay, less about tooting the horn, just knowing that your investment is protected when you come. You continue to consider joining us and staying with us and advancing with us, right? So really, we focus on tax accuracy, and that's what Mark was talking about, right? The ability to understand the functional tax rules, right? The changes, keeping up with the changes, right? And that's the innovation, if you will, that will happen from Q Series as opposed to the technical innovation. Okay, and then in terms of what we're doing with our O Series from a pre-built supported integrations, right? And if you think about Sage, right, and that the Sage integration that we have, which is a native supported certified integration, right, and a number of those other providers that I showed. So again, let you kind of read through this and ensuring that it's the solution is scalable across the globe, right? Given that you're European and you're LATAM. So we really have two models. We've got the on-premise, which you folks have today, which is hosted in your data center or your data center of choice, and then we can host in the cloud, right? And that's it's really up to you how you want to do that. Know that when you're talking about a hosted solution by Vertex, in this case, that's what this means on the left, that we are going to handle all the technical upgrades for you. So when we move from version 8 to version 9 and version 9 to version 10, that's all going to be done. You're not going to need a third party like Vertex or some other third party to come in and help you with that upgrade from both a time and expense perspective. And then all the monthly functional updates that you need to go out and ensure that are done today, that is done automatically. So you're covered there, and that's part of the benefit, as well as basically handing off those internal hosting expenses from a hardware and software technical platform cost that you would be incurring today. All right. Any questions on that? Make sense?
Makes sense to me, but that's Scott and Ellie's world.
Okay. Well, I'm glad it makes sense to you, Erica, because if it makes sense to you, I'm sure it makes sense to Scott and Ellie. All right. If it doesn't, please speak up. So one of the things I talked about commoditization and a differentiation, right? So we've got over 100 tax experts that are looking at the latest and greatest changes from a tax and compliance perspective across the globe, right? And that's unique to us. No other firm that we're aware of has this kind of staff and breadth and depth. So that's important to know. We work with third-party tax and technology implementers. These are some of them. I don't know if you do business with any of these today or others. Is Astia still engaged with you folks?
No.
No. Okay. We have a co-innovation initiative. So if you ever wanted to do that with us, and then we've got, user groups. I don't know if you folks are plugged into these today, but we have those. We have which are very valuable, and a lot of folks have great feedback. And then we've got our annual user exchange, our Vertex Exchange conference, which was remote last year and very, very widely attended, but also had great feedback for our first remote ever. And then we've got quarterly informational webcasts, not less about product, more about current trends and challenges in the industry from an indirect tax perspective. So this in summation, I'm going to flip it over to Mark now. He's going to start off with the differentiation between Q and O for you, and then dive into every sort of. He's going to synthesize everything we've talked about today. So Mark, just no pressure there at all. As he digests that comment, just to let you know, 40 plus years, as I talked about, closer to 5,000 customers now. Again, this is who you're partnering with today. We'd love to continue to evolve that partnership into indirect tax automation 2.0 and get you folks to a next generation platform. And we're here to do that with you and to support you in doing that, because we think there's a lot of value for you in doing that, for both from a cost perspective and from a time and people perspective, to free those people up from doing manual processes today and really streamlining them into more efficient tasks. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and flip it over to you, Mark.
Okay, thanks, Paul. I am going to share my screen here. Let's just take the entire screen. So I just wanted to start off with, just not to kill you with more slides here, but just to show you the O series architecture. So, again, you can see that, this is going to be different from the Q series. Have you guys decided whether you guys would want to be continued on-premise or go to a cloud-based application? I know you didn't have an answer at the last call. Is there a strong inkling one way or the other?
Well, I can tell you when we gauged in 2019, we were looking for on-premise, I believe. Okay. I don't know if that's changed. Scott or Tom would have to weigh in on that one.
The only thing that plays into the mix is that we're in an effort right now to move our systems to a cloud-based platform. So whether Vertex is done, so-called on-premise or not, it's probably gonna be in the cloud, one way or the other. So I don't know how that changes things.
Yeah, why don't we, Mark? Why don't we? I mean, I want to make sure I'm not, not sabotaging, but stepping on your thought process here. But to the extent we can table the platform, sure, we probably should do that.
Yeah, and just for the background, is that what Tom refers to is we're on track right now that we're working on these systems and questions with the Sage, the WITs, etc., are moving from our on-prem to Azure. So that's that's what we're in the process of. So we'll be hosting them in Azure and operating them from that perspective.
Okay. Yeah. So that's hosting them with us and communicating between Azure and us is not an issue. We don't host with Azure today. We host with AWS and Oracle. But there's efforts now for us to develop a relationship with Azure. Microsoft is a customer of ours, so they run their business on Vertex. SAP runs their business on Vertex. Oracle runs their business on Vertex. So we've got that in place with Microsoft already. So I don't think it's going to be long before we've got Azure. But regardless of that, we've got a lot of customers that either work with Azure, Google, Amazon, or Oracle cloud infrastructure, or even SAP, right? For instance, and they use our hosting and they communicate between Azure and our hosting facility. It's not a big deal, but we'll table that for now. Now that I asked us to table it and then I went on for about 2 minutes, so I apologize.
No problem.
Is there a unique selling point from being Vertex? Like I remember watching back the last video and they said the monthly maintenance will then be done in-house by Vertex, and so is there actually a time saving, etc.?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and that's what I was talking about, Patrick, a few minutes ago. I mean, we're going to do all of those tax updates for you, those functional updates on a monthly basis. And then we're going to do all of those the maintenance and the upgrades, right? So all of that will not need to be done by a third party. When we went from version 8 to version 9 in O series, anyone who's on prem needed to hire a third party, i.e. Vertex, or, you know, their Astia, if you will, of choice, and have them come in and help with the upgrade. Just like I think you folks probably have done in the past, right? When you've upgraded Q, what have you done that on your own, or have you hired a third party?
Typically on our own.
Okay, you've done that on your own. I mean, we don't typically see that with O series, right? I think probably given some of the complexities and the capability, the vastness of what it does, our O series on-prem customers require assistance, outside assistance. So that's part of the value proposition, Patrick, is that that's all done for you. So huge.
Well, you know, the way it started was Astia was a partner with Vertex, and they wrote like I say, this common program that makes all the Vertex calls. So we had a vendor supported integration, but since we've taken on maintenance of the application ourselves, that integration is still there, but it's up to us now to maintain it.
Get it. And I can see why you folks could, I don't want to say get by, but I will say it, get by with doing it yourselves. I mean, because that integration has been built. You folks are savvy enough where you can ensure that the integrations work. You're skilled enough to do that. Not everybody is, but when you start adding VAT into this thing, you start adding consumer tax use tax into it, it does increase the complexity. And, you know, so that's the reason for the third party, you know, the necessitation there. So go, Mark, I'll flip it back to you.
Yeah, no, and to you know, the point with this RO series architecture that, you know, is basically the generation that you're looking at today, it is built in mind with some standard integrations. Like we said, we have a standard integration for Sage 300. Obviously, your WIT system, if you wanted to do direct calls out of there, because I know that you guys were considering that, as long as you are able to do those web service calls, we do have the ability to do that. With the O series architecture, which is, you know, again, Q series wasn't, it was more that point solution. So again, O series allows for those web service calls and any type of, you know, direct cloud integrations across all those different systems. So again, you could hook up as many systems as you want, even if you were in the future, switch to a different ERP, a CRM system, whatever it is, you know, Vertex can be that centralized tax engine for that consistent calculation across all the different channels. You know, we are talking about the tax engine, but we're also talking about the ability to also do what's called a tax area lookup, that center box there in the blue. Q series didn't allow for basically what we call address cleansing. You know, you enter in an address and it's not just quite right. We do have the ability to kind of scrub it to make sure it's a valid US postal address. So again, that's something that's part of the engine that you can license. Some people have their own method of doing that, you know, or license something else, but it is something that can be licensed as part of your O series license. So again, something to consider, and it's also, you know, part of the web services that you can make a call through. The last thing is
interesting, because today our address validation, we make calls. We have an arrangement with MapQuest.
Okay.
And we make calls over the internet to MapQuest to validate all of our addresses that come in. And we have, you know, thousands of different end customer addresses. So that's you know, it's a big challenge. But that does happen today, you know, over the internet. I guess more in a, you know, in a cloud sort of format. So, but we do pay MapQuest for that service. So, you know, I guess the interest there is, you know, there's some duplication there possibly, that your tax area lookup, you know, might do some of the same functions that what we have today in our MapQuest interface.
And is the MapQuest global, or is it just US or Canada? What do you know what the scope is?
Next to the MapQuest, I don't know, Scott. I mean, I think it's focused on WITs, but I don't know if anybody else is using those calls.
I think it's just focused on WITs. I don't know of any. Yeah. It'd be ad hoc if anything else, and probably only by IT if there was some special project.
But Scott, wasn't it used for workstation too?
Yeah, it was wired in still coming out of WITS.
No, but I'm saying that it wouldn't just be U.S. And that was what he was asking, if it was just U.S. or international. If we use it for workstation, it probably wasn't just U.S.
But I'm not sure MapQuest has been very effective for outside the U.S., so we don't think while it was could be called in those arenas, but it really wasn't effective, so it, by practice wasn't used.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I only asked because Vertex's service is U.S.-based addresses. Some people, like I said, are using stuff at a global scale, but obviously Vertex is looking at the taxation piece. So once it goes global, the address isn't very important when we talk about things outside the U.S. because it's a VAT rate to that country. So again, yeah, so I mean, for the U.S., the one side of the street could be a different rate than the other side, which is why we really pinpoint things with our cleanser. So if you're cleansing those already to that 9-digit zip, making sure you've got that address correct, obviously you can continue to use that, or again, Vertex has the ability to add that to your license. So again, it is an a la carte item, that Paul can break out for you if you want it to switch or not.
And we do that today. I mean, we use Vertex for Canada and the U.S. But in the STIA integrated Vertex solution, there is a lookup to get a geocode. So every new address in the U.S. and Canada, it has to, in order to perform tax calculation, we have to match a geocode to that address. So, but what we do is we call MapQuest with the address, and then it gives us, is this a valid address or not? And then we take that information, a better quality address, and match that up with the Vertex to get the geocode. So it's like a two-step approach.
Yeah, and it'll probably be a similar approach here. The only difference is we don't call them geocodes anymore. We call them tax area IDs. So it's actually increased the granularity of it, because again, O series has a lot more capabilities with certificate management, with the VAT calculations, so and the granularity of the tax calculation when we talk about not only the sales and seller use tax, but then, like I said, like Paul said, the consumer use tax. Okay. So without further ado, I wanted to go ahead and launch Firefox here. And of course, it always asks me to update whenever I launch here. So let's just go ahead and ignore that. So this is the platform. And again, you guys had probably seen this a couple years ago. Was it version 9 when you guys looked at it, or was it like version 8 still? Do you guys remember? Maybe not.
I have no idea.
I don't remember either.
Yeah, I wasn't involved, so this is all new to me. So.
Okay, so this is our version 9. It basically was released about 1.5 years ago. It is HTML5 based. Our version 8 was Flash based, and obviously with the Flash retirement at the end of 2020, we actually had to, obviously be off that particular technology. So the user interface was the biggest change. We did roll out some extra features, the ability to support latitude, longitude calculations, more and again, I don't know if that's something that is that something that's relevant to your business, latitude, longitude, in terms
We're computing latitude, longitude, but we don't start with the latitude, longitude. We start with an address, and then we compute the latitude, longitude. So I don't know if that would make a difference or not. So we don't have simply a latitude, longitude, and want to know where that is, what jurisdiction that it's from. We have an address, and then we use that to get a latitude and longitude. So,
okay. Well, like I said, if you were to originate with a latitude, longitude, we could actually determine that tax area ID, / geocode that you called it. But if you have the address, that's typically the one that's a little bit more accurate. Well, they're both very accurate in terms of their pinpointing of the actual rooftop. So again, the ability to actually support that either way is something that it is capable of. But again, you're setting up your taxpayer, and again, and again, I don't know if you guys are just a single company, or do you actually have multiple subsidiaries underneath the parent company?
In the U.S., it's one company, but globally we have 15.
Okay. So you actually have basically a company over in the EU and a company here in the US that's kind of split, and then the subsidiaries and under the EU are basically 15?
We have 8 EU companies.
Okay. Okay. And do they have any subsidiaries?
No.
No. Okay.
They're all subsidiaries of our US company.
Okay. So, I mean, we do have the ability to support parent-child relationship where the children inherit the parent's taxability. But again, if they're unique to that particular jurisdiction in terms of their registration, again, you're going to define what that nexus profile is in the different jurisdictions globally. And again, it goes down to the city, state, county level. But again, you'll be able to go ahead and say, where they're going to be able to be supported, at the different jurisdictions across the globe. We also, I don't know if you guys are subject to the new one-stop shop scheme in the EU. Is that something that is on your guys' radar with the pending legislation change here in July?
No, because we're service-based.
Okay, so
one-stop shop would only be goods.
Yeah, so okay, I was about to say, I don't know if you had any goods that are subject to that, but we obviously now have support for that as well. So again, when we're talking about a global part of the footprint as well, though, obviously we're also capturing, the registration, the VAT registration details. We actually do the VISE validation for both, the actual registration details of you and the people that you're shipping to and all of that. So again, we actually have that capability to do that validation within this platform, as well as making sure that we record all of those registration details for both a B2B transaction, or if you do have B2C transactions as well. We support all of these as part of that integration for VAT purposes.
One of the things that when you talk about the nexus, I know that there's 3 addresses that are involved. And even though the Q series had support to support those 3 addresses, our interface really only deals with 2 addresses. Our home base, the company headquarters is 1 address, and where the work is done is another address. So that's part of the problem with us being able to compute use tax, because that 3rd address that helps define the nexus, we don't currently make use of that today.
Okay, yeah, well, actually, O Series has actually expanded it to 4 addresses now. So we've got the ability, yeah, because we do have the ability to do the destination, obviously very important. We do have what's called administrative destination, so basically a sold to versus a shipped to. So you could actually have, a destination that's different than where the actual item was billed to. So we actually have an admin destination and a destination, and then we have that admin origin. So again, that's where you basically took the order. So, maybe you took the order in New York, but you shipped it out of, a warehouse in Georgia. So again, that's where you do have a lot more ability to get a pinpoint. So when you're talking about drop shipping, when you're talking about the ability to do things of, like you said, if it's intrastate versus interstate, we're looking at all of that address detail to determine, should it be taxed at the origin, should it be taxed at the destination?
And some of that is kind of a business, I don't know if from a business perspective we look at, what some of those other addresses are other than the origin and what the work is done. So our logic in our application doesn't currently have the ability to even know what that other address is, and it's written in a way that it doesn't have the provision to send that information to Vertex.
Is that from the WIT system or from Sage?
Yeah, in the WIT system.
So now this is, again, when you're talking about if you were to switch to the O Series platform, you would be writing a different integration using those web service calls. And then that would be your opportunity to now capture more of those data elements that would be, helping you get a better accurate tax rate. So, I mean, obviously you might have some issues right now with maybe not charging the right rate because, again, you're not getting all the address details that you need, whether it's Illinois, Texas, California with the modified origin state. This would be an opportunity to really hone down and get a better accuracy when we talk about those calculations, because that new integration, and again, we could give you the details about our web services. All of that is captured as part of that, because again, you've got the ability to, as part of that XML, the XML defines, the seller, the buyer, all of, and the addresses that are involved.
Yeah, but the thing on our side that makes it unfortunate, and having multiple address capabilities here and research that way is easier. Right now, we do that research kind of off system. For example, we have one client that they ship us equipment to one location. We fix it and then send it back to all different locations. So obviously there's, based upon the state, whether it's, destination or location of fix where it's taxable, we have to do all of that research and stuff off book and input the required address for correct taxation. So if there's, capabilities here for that, I think it'd be much easier.
Yeah, and there's even the ability in our tool here, that's something that Q-Series never had, was the ability to even write logic for, again, so for certain types of transactions, you actually have the ability to write your own tax rules, calculation rules, your own what we call tax assist rules, where you can actually say, I've got one written here for a special customer. If it's this customer and I'm selling them computers and the destination's going to Chicago, to actually, override, in this case, the rate, but you can say override the destination or the ship to address or whatever, the calculation to be this basically state instead of this particular state. So again, there's standard rates and rules within the O-Series engine to actually look at the customer, look at the product, look at, all those different addresses. But there is even the ability to write if then else logic basically as part of the engine to do some type of extra logic outside of the normal tax rules to actually, make sure that we can, basically fit your needs as a business for those crazy corner scenarios or those special customers or those nuanced rules that might be not standard as part of the Vertex content. Because everybody's business, there's always some crazy rule that's an exception to the rule, or you've got something in place, right? Some people negotiate with certain jurisdictions to be exempt from tax because we built a warehouse or something in your jurisdiction. There's all that stuff that these tax assist was actually built in so that you're not having to, if you can't do it in your ERP system to pass that correct data, Vertex can kind of either manipulate those data elements as they're coming over to the tax engine or even fill in blanks. So again, if it's missing data, Vertex can say, if this field is null, then populate it with this value if it's this type of transaction. I mean, there are a bunch of what we call drivers to the actual tax calculation that you define, whether that's a product, whether that's a service, whether it's what we call a flex field, a user-defined field. You are defining, like I said, all those products, all those how something is used, your own basically user-defined fields to drive the taxability determination within this engine, which is something Q-Series really just, it was fixed. They looked at the customer, they looked at basically the addresses and, the product as well. With O-Series, you have these user-defined fields, these flex fields that actually can look at, hey, is this, something that, is the end user's a customer versus a business? Is the, is there extra manufacturing that had, or extra a service that was attached to this? All of that is basically, can be captured and to drive a more accurate tax calculation. Okay, so that's really it's a lot more robust in the ability for this system to capture more than just those standard things. Our legacy products were built, again, back in the days where, the taxation was not that it wasn't more difficult, but, things obviously with tax codes, there's a reason why the tax code books, whether it's income tax or sales taxes, get thicker, because there's just always more rules being added. They're never really being subtracted. So we've had the ability to actually, get more robust tax rules and regulations. And again, this is the matrix that is now part of our standard content, because if you guys set up in Q series, the services being, largely exempt, or, whatever types of services that you have, Vertex has them as standard categories now. So depending on the types of services that you're providing, we can say, is it exempt? Is it taxable? Is it taxable at a non-standard rate? Depending on where that service is being provided. So, like I said, we've got general services, we've got, like memberships, we've got business services, advertising services, data processing, so again, hardware and engineering services. So again, we've got a lot of service and product categories to make sure that we capture all the nuances within the different jurisdictions across, in this case, the U.S. and even the globe, because again, we've even got the global content, when you talk about the different countries that you might be in.
No, and part of the issue with our current system is there is some ability in our current system to like override the tax rates and things like that from Vertex, but it's built into the WIT system. So if there are other systems, they don't apply. So there's no central place if you have, if you're trying to compute tax from multiple places, which, most of ours come out of WIT, so I don't know if there's a need for that. But the other thing is that, some of that is kind of under the covers in a technical layer that the user really can't get to. Need to ask IT for it. If you need to override tax for whatever reason. There may be some situations where, like in the Q series, they have tax, TDM, tax decision maker, and we have used it in the past, I think for Canada, because of I think a lot of it had to do with the harmonized tax rates and things like that. There were some things that, we couldn't do easily with just using the Vertex Q series tax system by itself, but so we did make use of that. I think maybe, I don't know if we still use it today, the things like that. And I don't know, from a business perspective, what our industry, some of the challenges of our industry are. For instance, like Massachusetts will have a tax holiday. We have no capability to do anything like that, but at the same time, I don't know if our industry, if that's an issue for our industry, not knowing what the tax rules are for the industry.
Probably not.
What kinds of things that we would want to make use of that Vertex has, but from a business perspective, people don't know that it's there, or maybe it's not even an issue. So, from my perspective, I don't know if it's an issue or not. I know what we can do and what we can't do. And some of those things that we could do are just kind of hidden away. So it's not like the business people could go in and just modify those rules on the fly. You have to talk to IT and say, hey, we want to do this special thing. What program changes can you make to make that happen?
Right.
So that may or may not be part of the challenge, and not knowing what the tax concerns are for our industry. I know the challenges there. They may not be an issue for us as an industry.
Well, and I think you pinpointed why, Vertex went to this O series architecture, is to allow a lot more for that flexibility to support those scenarios. Because again, nobody wants to have their business rules controlled by somebody with an IT, because again, nobody needs those resources. So now you'll be able to do, again, whether it's just through the standard functionality, like that whole TDM thing that you said, the tax decision maker in Q series, is kind of eliminated now with that, just picking the countries or the states that you're in, or the localities where you're registered to collect tax, coming here and saying, yes, I sell this product or service, and it knows if it's exempt or taxable. You're not having to go into every jurisdiction and say, yep, it's taxable at the state level, but exempt at the city, taxable at the, so again, this is kind of replacing all of that. And then again, having the flexibility beyond that, when we go back here and we talk about the ability to write those tax assist rules, to say, I'm selling whatever it is, a bundle of services where I've got even like an allocation table that I can call, or you're actually creating your own calculation rules or basis rules. You've got now the control as a business person to make those tax rules and tax logic across, and it'll be applicable to everything that's now connected to O series. So as part of that new integration, or the one, if you use one that, Vertex is built, to like a Sage 300, it's looking at all those extra factors and giving you, again, the greater accuracy and the ability to control the behavior if you see something that, is not, agreeable to how your business is running. And again, these are things that aren't in Q series.
Another big thing that we don't take advantage of today because we're using that really old quantum version 1 interface, which is it predates even of some of the Q series, newer interfaces, is that we don't have like a line level ability. We don't use a line level ability to compute taxes. For instance, I think all of our taxes are really based upon the whole invoice, and we can break down, like, is it labor versus parts, things like that. There's no breakdown of like this part versus that part.
And that's
line versus this line versus that line.
Yep. And that's critical. Again, when we're talking about, the taxability of that product or service, looking at the line item, I don't know if you do have it where an invoice might cover different locations. Obviously, again, our integrations are built to look at that line item level. So if, the service on line item 1 is in one state and on line item 2 or is on the other side of the street, obviously, our logic is there to compute the tax properly at that line item level. I mean, you still could do it at the header, but obviously, depending on how you write the integration. But again, if you're going to be reevaluating this, obviously, you're going to get a much greater accuracy when you look at every single line item to determine, again, maybe it's a part versus a service, and again, it becomes, taxable for that line item, and not the entire order.
Yeah. So, those are, from a business perspective, it will be interesting to hear, like, are there some things that the company needs that just aren't being met from that taxability perspective? Because, some of it may either be, over O series versus Q series, and some of it may be just, our interface to Vertex wasn't written with a lot of that in mind, because back in the day, there wasn't this breakdown like there is now.
Yep. And then the next big piece that, again, that's part of your business that you had talked about yesterday is the exemption management. Again, the ability to just go ahead and not only capture, the details about the actual exemption, which jurisdictions is it applicable to, so you'll be able to get in the full details about the exemption. Obviously, the certificate number, the review date, the expiration date, and it'll enforce that as part of that web service call. So if it's past the expiration, it'll start taxing it again. We actually validate the certificate format. So again, if that's not a valid format for that particular jurisdiction for that particular reason, it'll say either it's valid or invalid. We have the ability to store the PDF images here, or, if you wanted to put like W-9s in here as well. I mean, there's the ability to actually have external documents support this, so that when you're going through an audit or anything that, for exemptions, all of this data is housed in the same area. And even when we talk about the certificate management area, there's even the ability, as long as you start getting this data here, the ability to start communicating with these letter templates to say, what, I want to actually create a letter batch of everybody who, is expiring within 30 days and 60 days, so that I can request a new certificate. Or maybe I'm set them up as exempt, but they don't have a certificate on file. I can actually run this letter batch from that customized letter template that I have there, and I can go email them. I could print out a hard copy, to that person, in this case, to get a certificate on file, because, I marked them as exempt, but they didn't give me any documentation. Well, I'm now requesting it from that letter that I've created, and it actually then can get emailed or printed as a hard copy. So again, a lot more robust features that in Q Series, you just said, hey, this customer's exempt or not for this particular jurisdictions. We've got a lot more robust features and functions here. And like I said, the ability to, if there was an audit, of your company for a specific jurisdiction, you just, within a couple clicks here, you can just go ahead and just say, in this case, I'm going to say, go to the US here, and I'll just say Alabama. And again, if the auditor gave me a date range, I could put a date range in here, but I would run this particular report to see, the metadata on the certificate for that customer. Then I would actually see his image. I would see the metadata on the next customer, and then I would see his, certificate image. So again, within a couple clicks, I have all the things that I need to refute that auditor about why all these customers are exempt on their orders. So again, all of this stuff being housed in the same, function, all the connected systems call to look to make sure that that exemption is in place. It really centralizes that tax function, centralizes that management, so that again, you have one source of truth when it comes to all things tax, when it comes to, like I said, the taxability of the products or services, but also for the exemption when an exemption's in place. Okay.
And then from a business perspective, I can't really say whether some of these things are useful or not. Again, in our industry, is that something that is a need that that is not being provided for today?
I would say it is. Yeah. This is Patrick here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, from a reporting standpoint, we had talked about that. I know we're kind of running a little bit low on time here, but I just wanted to show you some of those outputs, because we do have standard outputs, that are, very similar to the Tax 2000 report that you're running today. But again, we've got some standard reports that are, PDF based, where you can actually go ahead and, just get that detail. Again, you've got the returns product, so you'd be doing an export of this data from one reporting database for as many periods as you want. Again, no separate databases. It's all one reporting database that you can pull this data from. But we've got the ability, obviously, to pull all of these different standard reports to give you the data. You could do that export out, or what's even better with this platform, which again, Q Series you could never do, is create your own custom reports. We call them extracts, but you could actually say, hey, I want to get an extract, and you could pick the table within the O Series database. In this case, I'll just say certificates, obviously give it a name, and then you would sit there and define the fields that you want to actually put on the report. I'm just going to add all of them, but then you could drag it up or down, you could sort it, you could group it, you can put filters on the data, so you can actually say, where, the city equals whatever, equals, a certain, value, or a, doing it by a certain region. And then obviously your format, you could do HTML, PDF, XML, Excel files. So again, there's really a lot of ways that you can customize whatever a custom report is for whatever need it is. Managerial reporting, again, audit defense, or even something to actually, review before you would export this data over to your returns product, which again, then it would do an automatic population of the forms that you're used to today. So again, a lot more ability to not only take the standard reports that are here, which are a lot easier to generate. Like I said, in Q Series, it's kind of a pain to do the generation of those. Here, it's a couple button clicks, but also, like I said, each department could have their own specific report to support whatever business function that is. So again, a lot of flexibility there as well. That kind of is just an overview of it. I mean, I'm just going to wrap it up with going over, basically a comparison here, between Q and O Series. We didn't talk about this, but obviously there's the technical ability of the security itself. So role-based security, you can actually lock down certain features and functions by user in the O Series platform. You can actually define, we've got predefined user roles, but you can actually define your own. We've got audit logs that actually can say who did what in the system. Again, these are some of the things that are located in our system menu. The security, this is where that role-based security is. We've also got, obviously, the ability to see, again, that activity log. Who's doing what within my system? Who's making these changes, or who's creating a letter batch? It shows me doing that. So again, a lot more features on just technical capabilities of the platform itself because it's a lot newer. The interface technology, again, C and the basically client server, now going XML. We do have also Java integrations. Again, if you were to be on premise, you could do a Java integration if you didn't want to do the web service calls. Again, obviously the tax jurisdiction capabilities, geocodes were the old thing, tax area IDs are the new one, getting a better granularity on it. That address cleansing we had talked about. True consumers use tax, again, sales and sellers use tax is in the Q series, but the true purchase consumers use tax is now part of the O series platform. The categories, the functions, we talk about product taxability, customized like that. It was in the TDF, but now you just map it to a product code. Again, now also the ability to support that global content. So again, just easily clicking on those new countries that you're in. The ability to actually see, the robust certificate features, the enforcing of the expiration date, doing those letter batches, communications, the expanded reporting. There's this transaction tester, which I'm going to flip over really quick to, and obviously, now O series is a little bit more cloud-based. It's architected to be, working with cloud apps versus that client server model with Q series. But if I just flip back just to show you again, just some examples of, how our system's working, because also, you do have the ability to look up, the rules and rates here within the actual system. So again, you could look up rates by address, by jurisdiction, by latitude, longitude. So there is that ability there, but obviously you can even run what we call a transaction through here. So again, I've got some already defined here. So if I just go ahead and just grab a Tennessee tangible personal property example, again, this is just showing you the taxpayer, the customer who it's sold to. In this case, it's just a taxable customer, not an exempt customer. And it's going to Memphis, Tennessee, and it's $2,000 transaction. Again, it's going to look at all the address information, what the product was sold, all of that information to then say, here's the tax at the state, the single article tax, the county tax, the city tax. And again, because it's, web enabled, you can even look at the XML here. So like this is the call that went out to Vertex, with the details about that transaction. And here came back the results. Obviously, this is to view it, but you can actually see the XML as well. This is what will be coming back in the web service call to the calling application to say, what are the details at a line item level for the taxability of that product or service. So there's a lot of features here that help, from a technical standpoint, from a user standpoint. There's even the ability to also see, again, we can see the full detail. We can actually drill down on the actual rule to see, the full details of, when was that tax enacted? Why was that particular tax, the way it is? You can actually drill down to see, yep, this started in 1984. It's an actual, Vertex rule. There's the only qualifying condition is that it was tangible personal property. Maybe, maybe it was whatever clothing or something. It would say that here, or if it's a tiered rate or a single rate, you can see this one's a tiered rate. So 0 to 1600, it's at versus it's at a 2 1/4, but then anything over 1600 is non-taxable. So again, it'll give you that full auditability of why it taxed it in the different jurisdictions.
Okay, so Mark, I know that we're down to the last few minutes, and what how are we doing for okay? So we still got everybody on. So how are we? I mean, do you folks have outstanding things that you'd like to take into a follow-on conversation or demonstration, or do you think we covered a lot of the components and that you either had interest in or found interesting, and or is there anything that confused you today that you need some more clarification on? Because we know there's a lot here, as I alluded to earlier, and that's why I really like to try to pull out or tease out the challenge areas so that Mark can try to focus on those as part of his demonstration.
Yeah, and I'm just showing a VAT calculation here just for the folks, for the international content. Obviously, again, just looking at the full details of, where this particular item is going, in terms of country. In this case, it's going to the UK, so it's going to look at that address. It's going to look at any registrations of those customers. So again, if it was a B2B and you got a VAT registration, you can actually have that as part of the transaction. All of that is actually being considered when we talk about the international transactions to get those results. In this case, a United Kingdom just straight VAT rate of 20%. So, but yeah, we are at kind of time, so yeah, we can definitely do a follow-up but obviously next steps. I know Paul's probably gonna. You want to take that?
Yeah. Ellie, I mean, what are your thoughts here? You probably need to caucus internally with the team.